Hello friends, this is Elva. I am going to decorate a small 6-inch round birthday cake today for my grandson's birthday, which is tomorrow. And so I thought I'd invite you to come along and watch how it all gets done. Okay, so I made this vanilla cake, and it is just a small 6-inch round. Usually when we made cakes in our bakery, we used 3 layers or 3 6-inch round cakes. So this is just going to be a very small cake. The first thing I do is I use a serrated knife and I trim off the top of the cake so it's flat on top. And this helps when you're decorating. You don't want a lump on the top of your cake. And then I decide how many layers the cake is going to have. So this cake is small, but it was tall, so I could make 3 layers out of it. So you take your serrated knife and run it around the side of the cake, holding it as straight as possible. And then you let the knife just kind of carve into the side of it. As it carves deeper and deeper into the cake, you start to actually cut the cake in half. And then I remove those layers, obviously, set them aside to the side so that I can start adding my frosting between layers. Now, I do add a little bit of frosting onto that cake board because I don't want the cake to move at all in transport. When it's without it, it could certainly move, so I add a little bit of my frosting there. And this is a chocolate buttercream frosting. I'll go ahead and link the recipe to that below in the description box. But I'll put a little frosting on the cake board and then smash that cake down on top of that frosting so it starts to firm up, and it actually does a really good job at holding it. You know, funny thing is, smaller cakes are actually the hardest cake to decorate. Because you can see how lightweight this cake is. It starts to move the turntable before I'm ready for the turntable to move. It actually can slide around on the turntable a little bit. Often in the bakery, we would put a piece of tape underneath the cake board so that it didn't move around as much on the cake board. There's actually a little mat under the cake board too that's supposed to hold it in place, but still, because it's a small cake, it's lightweight like that, it tends to move around. So you'll see me kind of fighting with that cake board a little bit, trying to keep it in place. But anyway, obviously I know this family that the cake is going to, and I know that they don't like a lot of frosting between their layers. So I've really tried to keep it a minimal amount of frosting. So I have a little cup on the side there, and I scoop off some of the extra frosting. You'll notice that I use a parchment bag, a plastic parchment bag, and I use a tip. And that's a 1A tip. It's just a round hole. We used it in the bakery because you certainly can just use a spatula and dip out of the chocolate buttercream bucket to get your frosting on. But we wanted kind of a way to measure how much frosting we were using per cake. So this was a way that kind of helped us to all be frosting in a kind of a similar manner, so that nobody would receive a cake that had too much frosting or too little bit of frosting. This was just kind of our rule of thumb, that we would use these piping bags, and then we could regulate carefully how much frosting was going between layers. You also can put a filling in there. You could just do the outline around the outside of the cake with the frosting to kind of create a dam, and then you could put like a blueberry gel or raspberry preserve in the middle. Like right now would be a perfect time to add that. Or you could add some caramel to it. This cake is going to be just a plain vanilla cake with chocolate frosting, which happened to be my mother's favorite cake. And we're making this for my grandson. So this is not a hard cake to make. And obviously it's just an old-fashioned favorite, but you can do any variation of cake. Even when you're baking your cake, you don't have to have it just be vanilla. You can add some extra cinnamon to it, add pecans in the mix, and it makes a really good cake. That's actually my favorite cake, is vanilla cake with pecans baked inside, and extra cinnamon, and it's delicious. So now I'm starting to pipe on the outside of the cake. I'm adding the buttercream to the outside of the cake. And again, I'm still using my bag, my 1A tip, to add buttercream there. I noticed that there's kind of an excessive amount of frosting, so this is where I use my spatula, do my best to hold it straight as possible, use my turntable to help me to go around and scoop off some of the extra frosting. The turntable is really a cake decorator's best friend because it helps you to be able to frost your cake and to do it much easier, being able to whip it around. Now, obviously, this cake stand is quite expensive. I bought that from a restaurant supply store, but there's very inexpensive ones. Or you could even use your own personal Lazy Susan or something to do that. Now I'm using a little metal straight edge there to help just take off a lot of the, and to smooth out a lot of the frosting that goes on the side. The very top of the cake, of course, is going to be somewhat flat, so I'm just smoothing out the icing on the top of the cake. This part of the process usually takes me the longest time because I don't like it to have too much frosting on one side or the other. Trying to get it smooth and flat is not always the easiest, but knowing what the final decoration is going to look like will kind of impact how much time you really have to spend on making your cake smooth or not. This cake, I had decided that I was going to do a rustic finish on the outside of the cake, which is just a spatula technique where you hold the spatula on the side of the cake and you allow the indentions of the spatula to be the decoration on the side of the cake. And I'll start that process with a clean spatula in just a moment here. But taller cakes are easier to decorate. This is a shorter cake, so therefore all the challenges that could come out happen when you're decorating smaller cakes. But again, I'm just trying to smooth out the top of it the best I can and remove any extra frosting. So at this point in time now, I'm using the spatula to make those indentions to kind of create this rustic cake. And it really looks pretty on wedding cakes. We did hundreds and hundreds of wedding cakes using this spatula effect is what we called it. Just made it look very natural and rustic with white buttercream usually, and with taller cakes, and it always turned out beautiful. But in this situation, I'm quickly realizing that the cake is so small and the spatula is fairly wide that it doesn't have the same effect. In fact, I'm feeling like it's starting to look a little messy. And so, basically one thing that we learned with owning a bakery for years is you have to be ready for mistakes. You have to learn how to correct your mistakes. Usually you have a deadline. Your customer is going to be coming at a certain day, certain time. So you don't have time to throw a cake away in the trash and restart. So if you don't like the way something looks, you just have to redo it. You have to skim off your buttercream, redo your buttercream, change your direction, and do all of that pretty quickly. So that's what I basically came to the decision here, that it wasn't looking the way I wanted it to look. So I decided to smooth it back out to be a smooth cake on the side. And I remember that I have a little comb that we would use sometimes on smaller cakes. So I went and found that little comb and made the sides smooth again. And now I'm going to use that little comb on the side of the cake. So it still has a little bit of a decorative look on the side of the cake, but not such a rustic look. That look just wasn't working for this size cake. So this is the little comb I have. It's just a little plastic comb, and it has these little teeth on the side of it. And if you'll turn your cake slowly while you run that comb around, it makes this pretty little indentation on the side there. So it was simple, and I thought it gave it some decoration and design without it being too rustic looking. So I decided to go with that comb effect. And I did the top of the cake, but truly the top of the cake is not really going to show very much because it is going to be covered with decoration on top. Once you've kind of created that look, you really shouldn't make a lot of changes once you've done that design, but I felt like there was a little extra chocolate that had been forced off the side of the cake once I did the top of the cake. So I went back and tried to just pick up some of the extra buttercream so it would be not have that rich. Again, it's not going to be perfect. It's definitely just a small little cake for just a small little family, but all in all, it's about having it and getting it done. And I used tiny little M&Ms to decorate the cake with. These are his favorite little candy. So as you can see, I'm just spreading those on top. And those would taste good in the cake as well. That's something that we've done in the past. Put it in the cake batter. We've put them between the cake layers. Today, because this family, I know, like I said, doesn't like a lot of excess sweets, frosting, or candy, I decided just to put a few on top. And then I'll also work on putting it on the side as a border as well, just to add a little bit more flair. The next step, of course, is cleaning your cake board. You can't have that cake going out with that cake board looking as messy as it does. Unfortunately, I was out of paper towels today, and so, I was working with a very small amount of paper towels. But cleaning my cake board off is obviously important because I want it to go out the door looking as nice as possible. And that's the hard part about working with chocolate. Working with chocolate was never our favorite. Working with chocolate buttercream is a mess, always, and always took a lot of more effort to do any part of this. In fact, chocolate buttercream is not my favorite buttercream. It doesn't turn out as stiff as a vanilla buttercream does, so it's a little bit harder to use. But all in all, when people like chocolate, we'd make things in chocolate. But I would say probably 85% of our cakes that we made were not in chocolate buttercream. Most cakes went out in vanilla buttercream or colored with some flavoring, or some color, or even flavoring. Salted caramel was a favorite. Of course, cream cheese frosting is good as well. And that was a favorite too for a lot of our cakes. So the last part, like I said, I'm just putting on a little bit of M&Ms to go around the side of the cake just for trim. You can do anything. You could put marshmallows around the cake. You could do, we've taken small candy bars like little Snickers and cut those up and put them on top of the cake. You can put crushed Oreo. You can do some dollops on top and place little Hershey's Kisses on top of the cake, or even put a caramel drizzle or other candies or cookies or something like that to dress it up. But this is pretty much the way I decided to finish the cake. And it's cute. It's simple and it's cute and it's very doable. The most important thing, of course, is baking your cake with the right ingredients and at the right temperature, and then cutting that hump off the top of the cake, I think, really makes it look more professional, and make it look like it's not homemade. But definitely, it was an easy cake, quick and easy. And then, of course, putting the last items on the cake is a number 10, because he is turning 10. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it.
All right, friends, so the cake is done. It's not the best cake I've ever made. It's not the worst cake I've ever made, but it's done. And it's just a small little cake. We actually celebrated his birthday on Saturday night and had cupcakes, but like I said, this was just the extra batter left over. So we thought we'd actually surprise him with a little cake on tomorrow morning, which is actually his birthday. So anyway, thanks for watching. Cakes are really easy to make. You can do this yourself, and I hope you will. Thank you. Bye.